Now, what have been the key trends in the advice business this year? Well, to talk us through that, Andrew Whelan joining us from Dash Technology Group. Andrew, welcome back. Good to catch up with you.
Thank you.
All right, have you seen any particular trends develop this year as far as that's concerned?
It's been a huge year in financial planning and financial advice generally. One of the major ones is in an industry that has been decimated post Royal Commission. So the industry has lost about 50% of its planning base since 2018. The advisor numbers have now steadied at around 15,550 and have actually had about 300 new candidates enter, or new advisors enter the industry. Now, 300 is not a number to get excited about, but what's big about that is it actually shows that perhaps now we've seen the floor in terms of advisors exiting the industry, and that this is the lowest point that we will see over the near term. And ideally, in the face of new legislation with QAR being much touted and now the much debated DBFO, which stands for Delivering Better Financial Outcomes, legislation that's being debated at the moment, this could very much be the floor and be much more encouraging environment for advisors to re-enter the industry.
You talk about QAR, so that's what Quality of Advice Review.
Yeah.
What's that amount to?
Well, that's a really broad, sweeping legislation that Michelle Levy wrote, authored, and did a really good job in terms of running around and delivering on stakeholder management. But at really high level, the industry I've been in the industry about 25 years, and it tends to swing like a pendulum between a state of over-regulation and under-regulation. And for the last 10 years, we've really been in a place of over-regulation post-Royal Commission, and prior to that, really, which is the FOFA, the Future of Financial Advice Act, have had a massive impact in terms of closing up the accessibility of advice. So the only 1 in 10 Australians seek advice, even though there's something like 5 in 10 consumers would like to, but just cannot afford to, given the sheer amount of regulation that the poor old advisor needs to hop over due to government legislation over the last decade or so. Now the QAR has got better, and the DBFO have been really broad sweeping changes that allow a lot less, that do away with a lot less. Do away with a lot of the regulations that didn't add any value to the consumer, that was really just box ticking for the industry. But also, it's bringing in a type of advisor. Now, this is a really hotly contested area, but it is suggesting that they bring in a new type of advisor called a qualified advisor, which is like a junior or cadet advisor, if you will, which it will be limited in scope to what they can advise upon, but creates this pathway for people to come out of degrees, or while they're doing the degrees, to work in the industry, potentially work in larger institutions, industry funds, as a training ground, because we very much lost those training ground areas, and then that will again be another item or another rein we can pull in that could lower the cost of advice. And so the FSC themselves have done some modelling that suggests that if all of this legislation comes through as it's sort of been written, that the impact could be as much as bringing the cost down by 40%. So it's a really significant piece for not only the industry, but I think for Australia more broadly.
And Andrew, what role is technology playing in advice at the moment? And dare I ask, AI, is that come to the fore?
Yeah, it is. So the latest statistics that researchers have been providing have suggested that AI advisors, 50% of advisors are planning on using or are currently using AI in their practice. Now, the reason for that is post Royal Commission, all of the banks have exited. So they're called a Wexit, or the wealth exit of all of the banks. Now, what happens though is that all these private AFSLs or licensee groups have been created, where all of the remaining bank planners have turned to. So they've created their own groups, but without the support of these really large institutions. So what that has meant is that advisors have less support, same sort of level of regulation. So they're really looking strongly at their technology stack. So AI is a massive part of that, with 50% trying to see how AI can in fact create operational efficiencies within their business. But then also there's some statistics that show that technology in this environment means just simply more profit. So there's been some research that came out that suggested that there's a huge difference between what they call technologically savvy planners and not so technologically savvy planners. So, for instance, the ones that are better at implementing technology use about half as many staff to support each advisor. So, at the top end of savviness, the average is 1.87 staff to support their planner. Now, there's clearly cost of advice ramifications there that we've already spoken about, and legislation is trying to address. But down the other end, if there are planners that are not so technologically savvy and really try to avoid that, then they can use up to as many as 4 support staff to support each advisor. And in this new environment, it seems clear that AI and AI-enabled technology, like Dash, but like others in the industry, are really key to bringing down that cost in the absence of broad sweeping regulatory change.
So, Andrew, Dash Technology, I gather you made the AFR Fast 100 list. So tell me, what are you doing right?
Look, it's a really good question. We're really lucky in that we're blessed with a lot of really talented staff, but a really loyal advisor base that like dealing with a smaller group. So the platform space in particular, but software as well in financial planning, is dominated by really large institutions, large listed competitors, and there's some real strength in that. But one of the strengths that is one of the things that is difficult to keep up when you're of that size is customer service, and every client. So a lot of advisors come to us and they enjoy the fact that I know the names of most of them, and also to all of the staff. But it is it's been a really big area for platforms and software. There's been tons of growth. So over the last year, so for instance, NetWealth and Hub24 have been some of the two of the highest performers in the ASX over the last year, which shows that the demand for advice is staggeringly high still. And this is why it's such an important thing for the government to get right, and for technology players to get it right, because the demand for advice amongst consumers is not going away. Just our ability to, as an industry, both the advice side and the vendor side like us, to get it right is the key.